All right, Algebra 1/2, lessons 53 through 55. These are just slight variations of stuff you've already known. So that's a great thing sometimes to have math where it's not like you're learning a lot of new stuff. I'm going to go back to this concept. Blank is blank of blank. Okay, what's new on this particular one is that one of these are going to be saying a percentile. Okay, so for example, what is 1% of 64 as an example? So, all right, well, we know this is blank, we generally say is X. 1% is 0.01, so we change percent to decimal, and 64 is 64. So it is times. So we say X equals 0.01 times 64. And you multiply that out, and you get 0.64 is X. You use a calculator, but this one's kind of obvious. And so what is 1% of 64? 0.64. Okay, let's try another one. What is 40% of 80? Okay, again, X equals, just change your percent into decimals, of means times, and you end up with 4 times 8 is 32. Okay, so it's so what is 40%? The answer is 32 is 40% of 80. 0.4 times 80 is 0.32, is 32. X equals 32. And that's the answer. So the main thing you're looking at is to change from 50% equals 0.50. 27% equals 0.27. So you have to be able to change from percent to decimal, decimals to percents. And that's pretty much it. That's lesson number 53. So let's go on to lesson 54. Lesson 54 is talking about ratio and proportion. We've covered this. I covered it a little different than what we've done before, but basically it's recognizing this reality. Let's say 2/4 equals 5/10. You would agree. That's a half, that's half. This is what you're looking at. 2 times 10 is equal to 5 times 4, correct? Yes. 5 times 4 is 20, 2 times 10 is 20. Whenever you have a true statement, for example, 1/3 is equal to 3/9, that's a true statement. This is always true. This times this equals this times this. What we call this just kind of cross multiply. Now, what math people actually do is that we know this is true, so we can just rewrite this any way we want. We can move and swap things around. So for example, let's say I were to swap the 1 and the 9. 9/3 equals 3/1. Is that also true? The answer is yes. 9/3 is 3, 3/1 is 3. If you move these things along the diagonal, or swap them along a diagonal, it still works. Let's say, for example, 2/5 equals 4/10. Okay, what if I just move the 10 over here? And when I move it, I replace it with a 1. That's really important. Well, what's 2 times 10? 20 over 5. What's 20 over 5? Well, the same as 4/1, or 4. And so whenever you move something along a diagonal, and when I say move, you move it, but you leave a 1 down there. Or you swap it, for example, 2/5 equals 4/10. I'm going to swap these. I'm going to make that the 4 and that the 5. It remains true. 2/4 is 5/10. So moving and swapping is kind of what we say, but what we're really doing is we're saying this times this equals this times this, and that's the result. That's kind of the cool thing about that. So let's say now let's go to a problem. You have 4 over p equals 7/2, and you're asked to find p. So what I want to do is I ultimately want to get p equals something. Okay, this is what I do, is I look at it and say, is p by itself? No. What can I do to make p by itself? Well, I can move it up there, and I can swap with the 7. So I end up with 4/7 equals P over 2, right? I can do that. Just swap these two. And then I can move the 2 over here, replace it with a 1. Now I have P over 1, or P equals this. Well, what's 2 times 4? 8/7. That's the answer. So I can solve a problem by using the move and swap method, or essentially I'm using the idea that in a fraction that is true, I can cross multiply. Let's try another one. X over 5 equals 4 over 3. Okay, I want x equals something. Well, I'm going to move the 5 over here. Doesn't change it, puts a 1 on the bottom, so x equals 20/3. And I'm done. So it doesn't matter where on this little, if you have a fraction equals a fraction thing, 3/7 equals 9 over x, doesn't matter where the missing one is. If I can get that thing by itself, I've got the answer. So in this case, I'm going to swap these. So I'm going to get x equals 9 over 3, and I'm going to move, so I'm going to swap those, and I'm going to move the 7 up here. So I end up with 63/3, which is 21. The answer. Ding. Okay, that's lesson number 54. Last lesson, number 55. You've already done, and we actually talked about that a little bit with lesson 53. And that is this idea of writing percentages to decimals. Percent to decimals. Okay, and fractions. Being able to go from one to the next to the next. Okay, so a way to do that is you can kind of make a little chart. And I'm going to say, for example, let's say I have a fraction and I have a decimal and I want a percent. Okay, so let's say I have 1/8. Well, what is that in decimals? I don't know. So I say, well, 8 goes into 1. How many times? 0. 8 goes into 10 one time, carries 2. 8 goes into 20 twice, that's 16. Drop the 4, and 8 goes into 45 times. So 0.125. So I do my long division, or I take a calculator and I just say what's 8 divided by, 1 divided by 8, top divided by bottom, equals, and I'm going to hit my calculator, bingo, 0.125. It'll do that. You're allowed to do that at this point. Just use your calculator. So if you have a fraction to go to decimal, just take the top divided by the bottom. If you don't have a calculator, long division is your friend. Okay, now to go to decimal, all we do to go from decimal to percent is we move it 2 to the right. 1, 2, 12.5%. So this lesson is basically being able to take a fraction, change it into decimal, and then change that into percent. So let's look at some variation of there. There's 3 possibilities for you to see. There is, if you are given a fraction and so let's make some little chart here. So if I'm given a fraction, I just showed you how to do it. What if you're given a decimal, 0.46? Well, to go to percent, that's easy. That's 46. And this is 46/100ths. The end. If I can reduce that, I can. In this case, so this is 23/50ths. So if you're given a decimal, it's just read the number, 46/100ths. That's the answer. Reduce it if you can. Okay, if you're given a percent, like 72%, well, that's 0.72. And that's 72/100ths, which is the same as 36/50ths, which is the same as 18/25ths. And that's what you're doing. So if you're given a fraction, do long division or use your calculator to get the decimal. To get the decimal to percent, move the 2 places. If you're given a decimal, move it 2 places. And then write that over 100, reduce it if you can. If you're given a percent, 85%, that's 0.85. That's 85/100ths, which is, those can be divided by 5, so this is 13/20ths. And so do this and reduce it if you can. The end. That's lesson 55.